I'm Hannah, and for 12 years, I was the silent engine behind my family's business. Not the face, not the name on the plaques, but the one who made sure the doors opened on time, payroll cleared, and state inspections never raised a flag. My father, Thomas, was the founder and figurehead, and if you asked him, the only real brain behind the operation. I used to believe that too. I thought I was lucky to be included, even if that inclusion felt more like an assignment than an invitation. I managed the books, handled compliance-soothed vendors, and kept the assisted living centers from drowning in paperwork and lawsuits. But that Thursday night at 9:14 p.m., everything changed. My phone lit up with a single message from my father, short and surgical. "Don't come to Grandma's funeral. We're cutting ties. No warning, no explanation, just a serving." I stared at the words for a long time, not sure if I felt anything at all. It wasn't grief. It wasn't rage. It was something still and cold, like when you realize a house you loved never had insulation. I didn't respond. I didn't ask for clarity. I didn't beg. Instead, I walked to my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and logged into the company loan portal. It had been months since I last accessed it, months since they'd pushed me out of the meetings and quietly locked me out of most internal systems. But they never revoked my legal role. My name was still there, tied to the expansion loan we'd taken to open 2 new facilities. I remember when they asked me to sign. Dad said it was a formality, that my good credit would help, and I should be proud to carry the torch. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to belong. Now my name was the one thing holding the structure upright. I scrolled past the amortization schedule, the contact emails, and the borrower details. There it was. Thomas R. Gaines, Hannah L. Gaines, co-signers. A quiet breath escaped from somewhere deep in my chest. I clicked on the tab marked Modify Borrower. The form loaded slowly, as if even the system knew what I was about to do. I filled in my credentials, selected Remove from Agreement, and checked the legal acknowledgement box. Then I clicked Submit. It took 10 seconds. The screen blinked once, then refreshed. My name was gone. The loan now hung on my father's shoulders alone. I sat back in the chair and stared at the wall. My hands weren't shaking. My eyes stayed dry. But inside, something shifted. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was relief. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone waiting for a seat at the table. I was someone who had just walked out of the room and shut the door behind me, and I wasn't planning to look back. My father used to say that loyalty mattered more than competence, that a loyal fool was safer than a clever rebel. That was the foundation of both our household and the nursing home business he built from the ground up. We were raised with a rule book, not a childhood. Chores came before play, respect before voice. And in our world, respect meant obedience. I was 8 when I started sorting medical records. By 10, I was shadowing my mother during staff interviews, learning what not to say. At 12, I already knew how to smooth over billing errors without leaving a paper trail. My brother Jason got a different kind of training. He was the heir, the next in line, the one who didn't have to prove he belonged. He got days off. I got lists. He got praise for showing up. I got silence even when I did it all. Dad said it was because Jason needed to learn responsibility, and I already had it, that I was naturally dependable. It was meant to be a compliment, but it always felt like an excuse. The company came first, always. Vacations were rescheduled for audits. Holidays became strategy meetings. If someone asked what business we were in, the real answer was control. Control over time. Control over truth. Control over how far you could dream before someone reminded you of the family name. We didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about fairness. and we definitely didn't talk back. I learned early that asking questions got you labeled ungrateful. So I stopped asking. I just worked. At family dinners, Jason would brag about his sports scholarship and how he didn't need to understand the business. Dad would laugh and say he'd learn when it mattered. I would clear the dishes and memorize vendor reports under the table. My mother stayed quiet through all of it. She smiled when things looked stable and disappeared into silence when they weren't. Her only advice to me was always the same. Just be helpful. That's how you stay safe in this family. So I became helpful. I showed up first and left last. I never missed a staff review. I balanced sheets filled in for absent managers covered for Dad when inspections ran late and picked up the pieces when Jason forgot to file renewal forms. But helpful never became equal. It never became visible. I was indispensable and invisible at the same time. I thought if I kept proving myself eventually, the weight I carried would earn me a seat at the table. But that table was never meant for me. It was built for men who didn't have to ask for space, and girls like me were just expected to serve it. Loyalty was our family currency, and I spent mine like it would buy me something back. But all it ever bought was silence. By the time I was 23, I was managing 3 locations and handling lease negotiations for a 4th. I didn't ask for the role. I just filled the gap when our regional manager quit unexpectedly. No one said thank you, but no one questioned it either. When the state introduced new healthcare compliance regulations, I stayed up for 3 nights rewriting our internal protocols. Jason told Dad it would blow over. I had already emailed legal to update our liability coverage before breakfast. During expansion talks, I brokered the deal that got us the zoning permits. I negotiated the supply contracts, audited the construction budget, and closed on the property loan. The bank asked for a co-signer. Jason was in Cabo, so I signed. It was a split-second decision. Not because I was pressured, but because I'd been conditioned. Conditioned to be useful. Conditioned to believe that usefulness was my only currency. Dad called it stepping up. Jason said I was trying too hard. Neither saw the irony. When we opened the new wing, there was a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The mayor came. Jason gave a speech. I stood in the back with the maintenance crew because no one thought to give me a chair. That moment stuck with me longer than I expected, not because I wanted the spotlight, but because, for the first time, I realized they didn't even see me in the room. I handled payroll for over 70 employees, managed onboarding, drafted vendor policy, and rewrote our disaster recovery plan. Jason showed up late to quarterly meetings and still got the praise. Dad said he had vision. I had reliability. Vision got you headlines. Reliability just got you more work. I kept thinking that if I made myself indispensable, they'd have to respect me. But the more I did, the more they relied on me to fix their chaos, and the less they included me in the things that actually mattered. The board meetings started happening without me. First, it was because I was too busy. Then it was because things were under control. Eventually, they just stopped telling me when they were scheduled. When I brought it up, Dad said I should focus on operations. Jason said I was being sensitive. I started to wonder if maybe I was. But deep down, I knew better. I knew my name was on documents that kept the business afloat. I knew the numbers didn't lie. And I knew that if I ever pulled my support, the foundation would crack. Still, I stayed. Not for the recognition, not even for the family, but for the hope that one day loyalty and labor would be enough. But the truth was, they never planned to make room for me. I wasn't part of the legacy. I was the scaffolding they leaned on until they no longer needed it. It started with a catering invoice. Nothing big, just a $200 charge marked as community outreach, but I knew the vendor didn't cater anything for us that month. I dug through the records and found a string of similar expenses. Dinners, weekends, stays at resorts, and tickets labeled as leadership development. all filed under vague departments with my signature at the bottom, except I never signed them. At first, I thought it was a system error. Maybe someone copied my approval line by mistake. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. Jason had been using the company card like his own wallet, and worse, he was using my name to clear the smoke. I printed the files and brought them to my father's office. Sat across from him with every transaction highlighted, each total circled. He didn't even look up. He said I was nitpicking, that Jason was building relationships, and sometimes relationships cost money. Then he told me to focus on the books, not the behavior. I walked out without saying a word, but something in me cracked. Not all at once. Just a quiet splinter I couldn't ignore. The next month, I wasn't invited to the budget review meeting. They said it was streamlined, said I'd be briefed later. The briefing never came. My access to the finance dashboard started glitching. My passwords expired more frequently. My inbox is filled with summaries instead of reports. The real numbers stayed just out of reach. When I asked about it, I was told the system was under revision. But Jason's reports were still going through. His account wasn't restricted. Then one morning, I got an alert. A new vendor had been added to our payout system without an approval protocol. I tried to investigate, but my admin permissions had been revoked. I wasn't even notified. That weekend, I checked the statement again. The vendor belonged to Jason's college roommate, the same one who hosted a birthday party for him in Tahoe last spring. That invoice, too, had my name on it. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the spreadsheet. Not angry, not shocked, just numb. I realized I was being pushed out quietly. Not fired, not dismissed, just gradually erased. They didn't need me asking questions. They needed me to be silent, present enough to keep the books legal, invisible enough not to challenge them. So I stopped emailing for clarification. I started saving records offline. I bought an external hard drive and labeled it just in case. I didn't know what I was building, but I knew something was coming. Something I wasn't supposed to see. And the more they shut me out, the more certain I became. The business wasn't collapsing. They were digging a hole and hoping I wouldn't notice the shovel in my brother's hand. The email from the bank had just been sent. I'd flagged 3 irregularities each, tied to Jason's spending with supporting invoices and login history. I didn't expect immediate action, but I knew it would raise questions. 4 hours later, my phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Don't bother coming around anymore. We're done. No context, no conversation. Just closure in a single sentence." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Not because I was surprised, but because it was finally confirmed. The moment I stopped being useful, I stopped being family. I didn't text back. I didn't need to. Instead, I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened the folder I had labeled contingency. Inside were digital backups of everything I'd compiled for months. Internal emails, audit trails, signed invoices in Jason's handwriting, screenshots of me losing access to systems I used to manage. I didn't print a thing. I didn't make a phone call. I just sent an encrypted file to Danielle. She was a friend from law school who specialized in financial disentanglement. We had gone over the loan documents before. I wasn't a guarantor. I was a co-signer, and that meant I could legally remove myself before the loan was restructured. Danielle replied in under 10 minutes. One line, "Do it quietly. No warning. Just pull the brick." So I logged into the loan portal, the same one I had once believed was my badge of trust. My name was still there, and for the last time, I typed in my credentials, reviewed the terms, and selected Remove Borrower. The form was processed. The screen blinked. My name disappeared. Then I sent a secure message to the bank with attached evidence of internal misuse fraud and exclusion from corporate access. The kind of evidence that made lenders pause. The kind that made legal departments sweat. By morning, the company's account was under review. No press, no alarms, just a quiet freeze behind the scenes. I called my own accountant, explained everything. He walked me through credit shielding and trust transfer. Within a day, my personal assets were untouchable. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt awake, like someone finally turning on the lights in a room I thought was safe. I waited. Not for revenge, for silence, because silence from them meant they knew. It took exactly 36 hours. Then the voicemail started. First from my mother, then Jason, then the family lawyer. I didn't answer. I listened. Their panic confirmed everything I needed. They hadn't cut me off. I had stepped away. I had moved first. And this time, I wasn't just reacting. I was rewriting the rules. The messages didn't stop. 72 missed calls in 2 days. My mother frantic, Jason demanding. My father silent at first, then abrupt and urgent. The bank had frozen the business line of credit. Vendors weren't paid. Payroll bounced. Their empire was cracking, and they had no idea how to stop the collapse. Then came the email. Subject line, family meeting. Mandatory. No apology, no explanation. Just a time, a date, and a location. The same steakhouse we used for birthdays growing up. Same corner room, same fireplace. This time, no balloons, just desperation. I arrived 15 minutes late on purpose. Jason stood as I walked in, trying to act like this was normal. I didn't sit until I was ready. My father nodded at the chair across from him, like he still expected me to take orders. I took my time. The room was quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. Jason opened his mouth first. Thanks for coming. I didn't answer him. I looked straight at my father. He leaned forward. You made your point. Loud and clear. I nodded once. No. The bank made my point. I just stopped protecting your lie. He frowned, like I'd insulted his character, not exposed his choices. We're trying to fix this, he said. You think this punishes us, but it destroys your grandfather's legacy. I met his eyes. My grandfather built a garage. You turned it into a machine and forgot the people in it. You don't get to call that legacy. You get to call that yours. Jason scoffed. We gave you everything. You were handed a future, and this is how you repay us. I didn't blink. You gave me a job, not a voice. Silence again. Not defensive, just empty. My mother was the only one who didn't speak until now. What do you want, Hannah? I placed a sealed envelope on the table. This is a signed affidavit. I have formally withdrawn from the company loan, from the board, from every legal tie. You no longer have permission to use my name. My father reached for it. I put a hand on top before he could touch it. I'm not finished. I'm also submitting a tip to the state auditor. There are missing funds, unpaid vendors, payroll inconsistencies. You made this mess. It's yours now. Fully. Jason's face turned red. You're doing this out of spite. I stood up slowly. No. I'm doing this because I'm done pretending I was ever really in. I walked toward the door. My father's voice caught up behind me. Hannah, wait. Please. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. You told me we were done. I'm just agreeing with you. And I walked out. Calm, clean, untouched. There was no relief in the hallway. Just space and air that didn't feel rationed. Later that night, I forwarded the last voicemail from their accountant to Danielle. Then I turned off my phone for the first time in a week. No more emergency alerts. No more crises. No more begging for respect. The next morning, I got an email from the bank. The accounts had been marked as non-compliant. A review was in progress. The business would likely be flagged for investigation. Jason would be listed as the financial officer. My name would be nowhere, and for the first time in years, I felt still. Not silent, not scared, just finally still. I moved into a small loft on the edge of the city. The kind of place with exposed brick and too much sunlight where the quiet was full instead of empty. I bought second-hand furniture and built my own desk by hand just to remember I could create something from scratch. There were no conference calls, no emergency texts, no reminders to stay in my place. My calendar wasn't packed. My inbox was nearly blank. The quiet felt unfamiliar at first, but then it started to feel like mine. I started consulting on the side. Nothing big. Just women reaching out through old contacts, asking for help with contracts they didn't understand, or partnerships they were afraid to leave. Most of them weren't looking for legal advice. They just needed someone who knew what it felt like to be erased in plain sight. One woman asked if she was overreacting for not wanting to sign a joint lease with a brother who didn't include her in meetings. Another wanted help leaving a non-profit board where her name was used, but her voice wasn't. I didn't give them permission. I just gave them language. The more I listened, the clearer it became. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about clarity. The clarity to say no. The clarity to walk away. The clarity to stop translating silence as respect. Danielle and I started meeting more often, sketching ideas on napkins. She wanted to open a small firm, just for women like us. The ones who knew how to carry weight, but not how to set it down. We called it Anchor and Flame. Some days you hold things steady. Other days you burn down what no longer serves you. We took on 3 clients in the first month. Each one came with her own version of the story I knew by heart. Sisters erased by succession plans. Daughters listed as signatures, never as partners. Wives were cut off from the books once they started asking questions. Helping them didn't fix what happened to me, but it reminded me I didn't need to be fixed. I just needed to be heard. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version they trained me to be, the version that knew her worth even when no one clapped for it. I stopped waiting for apologies, stopped wondering if they missed me, stopped needing to prove I had always been enough. This wasn't healing through payback, it was healing through purpose. My life didn't feel small anymore. It felt sharp, focused, clear. And that clarity was mine. It didn't need their name, or their permission, or their seat at the table. I had built my own. Mira came in on a rainy Thursday with a folder full of contracts and eyes that didn't know whether to cry or fight. Her husband had built the bakery in both their names, but never let her see the books. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted to know where she stood. We sat in the corner of my office, the kind with too many plants and a coffee maker that always brewed a little too strong. I let her talk. I listened for what she wasn't saying. She showed me the numbers, the missing reports. The emails were where he said things like, "Trust me and let me handle it." I told her I'd seen those sentences before, just in different handwriting. When she finally asked if she was being unreasonable, I looked her in the eye. "You're not difficult. You're just finally visible." Her shoulders dropped like she had been waiting for someone to say it out loud. She wasn't asking for power. She was asking for acknowledgement, for air. That night, I stayed late, finished her paperwork, drafted her exit terms, marked the clauses in red ink where he had crossed boundaries, and hoped she wouldn't notice. Then I lit a candle on the windowsill. It flickered against the glass like a heartbeat. Outside, the city moved without apology. I didn't think about my father, or Jason, or what could have been if they had only chosen to see me. I thought about Mira's shoulders, the way they softened once the truth had a shape. My desk was cluttered with quiet victories. Files, letters, women who stopped shrinking, women who now ask better questions. I poured a glass of wine and wrote Mira a note for her next meeting. Underneath the legal language, I added one line in pen. You are not just a name on paper. You are the author of what comes next. I sat back and watched the candle burn lower. No noise, no rush, just stillness. This wasn't a chapter I needed to close. It was one I had rewritten, not out of anger, but out of knowing. There are ties that hold, and ties that choke. But the best ones are the ones you choose. And I had finally chosen mine.